Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to something new and maybe a little different to PSEGIT. We're calling it long-range planning. Some of this will sound familiar to you. This is really an enhanced version of investment planning, I think, as you all used to call it. We're going to add a little bit of a twist to it. Today's session is really to explain to the GPMs and the folks on the call what this process is, why we're doing it, the benefits, and how we're going to execute it. So let me jump right in. If my PowerPoint, there we go. Okay, so what is long range planning? So really it's a strategy top-down view of what IT is going to do over the next 5 years. So it's a 5-year time horizon, obviously with a little bit more certainty within the year 1, year 2, and it gets a little fuzzier as we go year 3. But what it is it's a framework and a process for us to capture two types of demands, right? So one is, what do our business partners want to do? And secondly is, what do we need from an IT lifecycle planning type view? So we marry these two, and really the goal is to come with a objectively ranked set of information to the business and say, hey, this is what your IT investment looks like for 2023, 2024, 25 and beyond, right? And that doesn't only include the IT capital budget, but potential IT sponsored projects from our clients as well. So if you familiar with the stage gate process, this is really feeding the first two stages, right? So I know when this came in, a lot of people didn't really understand the create concept idea. Part of what long range planning is really that create concept with the idea to get down to a more manageable list of potential projects that then you would go into business case development. So I know many of you are familiar with the BCCT, and then basically once you get BCCT approval, we go into more of the solution delivery phase. And again, sort of why I'm introducing this concept to the organization is twofold. One, so we as an IT organization can really say, hey, here's what we heard from you, business folks. Here's what we need from you in terms of IT dollars and what we're going to do. And do you agree with that? And secondly, is it's going to allow us to segue into more other areas for improvement, primarily around demand and capacity management. I know there's a lot of challenges here where if you look at our project distribution life cycle, we try to cram everything in through March and November, sometimes into December. That's always going to be a struggle when you look at holidays and do we have enough people to do it. So we want to try to even out those peaks and valleys so we can more consistently deliver. Going on into that is, the more we can objectively understand our business clients' needs and then reflect it back to them and then build a more regular cadence in terms of understanding what we're delivering, understanding their needs, what are the dollars, what are the costs, what's coming on. We start to build confidence in IT's ability to deliver and really start to think strategically and provide value. And then last but not least, this will also involve to start bringing back in value tracking. So today as an organization, and it's not just IT, it's even on the business side, we don't do a robust job on really saying is, okay, hey, we spent $5 million to put this system in. If you go look at the business plan, it was supposed to save $1 million in costs. Did it really do it, right? Do we really understand how did our investment pay out? So that's the really high level view, what long range planning does. It starts at the strategic view. It boils projects down through a series of things, and I'll show that on the next stage, to really get us to more of a, for lack of a better term, shovel ready set of projects that can be agreed upon and then executed year over year. So the phases that we go through up into that business case challenge is we start in the strategize phase. So I think some of you might be working with your roadmaps with Accenture, but essentially what each area will do is start building out these 5-year roadmaps, right? That's your strategy. What does my business partner want to get done? What do I need to get done? These get built up into a set of proposals. We'll then go through a process, what's called rationalization, which is, okay, how do we rank and stack this, present it back to the business to say, hey, your potential IT investment for 2023 is $110 million. Makes sense to you, right? We have to figure out where that is. Then there's a further refinement in the fall called prioritization, whereas after we look at it from the dollars perspective, we look at it, how many people do we need to do this, right? Say, do we even have capacity as an organization to do it? Do we need to do staff augmentation? Do we need to put it to a system integrator? And then we get to a final set of work that can actually be presented through business case challenges and funding. So as I mentioned, the pre-work to really this is basically having conversations with your business partners and building that 5-year asset roadmap, right? That really becomes an input to this process, right? And again, it is a combination of top down and bottoms up. So the top down is, hey, what is my business partner trying to do? What goals are they trying to achieve? Is it an enhancement? Is there a potential where they're looking at new capabilities and maybe you want to pivot them or guide them into a new technology? Is it maybe they're on a technology that's going to be end of life and they need to think about that? And then the bottom up is more your typical life cycle planning. Maybe you put an application into service in 2018 and, you know, hey, it's coming up on its 5-year life cycle. We need a hardware refresh. You know, we want to make sure we give the business enough visibility into, hey, you know, that the lift and shift and the upgrade is a couple $1 million, right? We want to make sure they see that in that whole list and that they're bought into it. Because at the end of the day, right, we are a service organization, right? We're there to say, okay, we heard your demands, here's potential costs, but ultimately the business pays for this, right? It's allowing them to look at that and say, hey, is that where I want to spend my dollars this year? Maybe I need to defer it. Maybe they just want to do nothing, right? And there's, you know, risks and associated costs with doing that. So I want to pause there. Any questions so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, how does this all fit into the IT strategy, right? So again, as we're doing this, and I apologize for all this, is what we're looking for is an objective way to put criteria around all these concepts. So is it reducing risk, right? So is it life cycle risk? Is it cyber risk? Is it, hey, if we put this tool and software in, we have better compliance process, right? So that reduces the risk. Does it create headroom, right? So maybe we automate a couple things and then we, you know, we need fewer people to do some of these manual tasks. Another is a financial opportunity, right? So maybe in the appliance business or the clean energy area, we build portals, we build whatever to get folks to utilize PSEG energy, and we can, you know, obtain revenue from that. So what you'll see, and I think some of you have seen this already, but really, as you take the roadmaps, the goal of the GPM and, you know, the PMO, we can help you walk through this process, is to create what you see on the right there, these projects at a glance, right? So it's basically an ultra light version of a business case. It's another term is like your elevator pitch. So basically is for each proposal, you would have a ranking in one of those categories, right? Does it reduce risk? Does it create headroom? Does it do a financial opportunity? And then is the gray box says time criticality, right? Do I need to do this in 1 year, in 2 years, or in 5 years? And what you'll fill out is this little chart here on the right. And again, it's just a summary, right? It's think about it as if you were to hand this to a director in the organization, could they read it and within 2 minutes of reading go, oh, I get this is what this project is going to try to do, and here's the cost, right? So again, at this point, we're only looking at rough order of cost magnitude. Potential risk, non-approval. So again, it's a simple 1-page, couple sentences, dollar value, and then, you know, type of categorization. And we'll go into a little bit more of this as we go through the presentation. For this year, we are only going to do tier 1 and scorecard apps, right? So again, this is new to the organization, not trying to say, oh my God, we need hundreds of these project at a glances, or you also hear me use the term 1-pagers. We're going to ease into it, but this will become a regular. And what I'm also hoping is if we have smaller projects, we try to start figuring out ways to group them into slightly larger buckets of work, which are typically easier to manage, and track rather than dozens of small things.
Hey, Rich. Hey,
Yes.
it's Michael Cohn. Sorry, I missed the first couple of minutes of the meeting. Apologies. Is this the same or different than what Accenture is doing?
So good question. The Accenture is the blue box on the left, right? So you're taking those roadmaps, they're the inputs. So this is the next level down, right? So you're saying this is where, again, you can apply creative solutioning. So I'll pick an example. Say I'm in the customer space and they want to say, you know what, we need to get better enrollment into low income and state assistance programs, right, as a potential revenue offset stream. Okay, so we want to, the project or the concept would say is, hey, we want to enhance our current customer portal, do some stuff within Salesforce for our call center representatives, and then build some integrations with something with the state of Jersey, right? That's the high level business requirements. You could boil this up into, hey, this is a $2 million project. It's going to take roughly 1 year to do. Here's the benefits, right, under the value proposition there. Here's some risks, and hey, if we don't do it, well, then it's a loss of potential revenue opportunity. A flip side we've also said is more the bottoms up. So if there's some life cycle replacements, we could say, hey, I'll give you a hot button topic. Right now is all these Windows 2008 servers and soon to be Windows 2013 servers. We want to maybe roll those up holistically and say, hey, we need a big infrastructure lift and shift, or we have a lot of assets that are going to be unsupported, present cyber risk, present just overall support risk, right, in terms of being able to patch and maintain application compatibility. So obviously that would be high on the reduced risk value. And we would again fill out those same things with a rough order of magnitude. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Cool. Got it. No, thanks. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
So,
hey, Rich, I have a quick question. In the previous slide, what is the can you go back? What does the N+1, N+2 mean in this context?
So right now, for Project at a Glance, that would be for projects starting in 2023 and 2024. So we don't need, and I'm glad, thank you for capturing that. We do not need Project at a Glance for something that potentially would start in 25 or onward.
Okay, thank you.
So again, at this point, they're not projects, right? They're concepts, right? These are things that you've distilled either from a top down, bottoms up, we want to discuss. So where are we going to focus right now? It's big picture stuff, right? Again, we want to ease the organization into the way of this thinking. The key point is really trying to capture these, but the ones that are going to have this additional analysis and presentation put together are the larger projects over 5, again, estimated costs. These are very ROM level, right? I'm not expecting anyone to do a formal tool or anything. These are ROM level, $5 million, 2023 and 2024 projects. If you have a bunch of little ones, I really would encourage you to try to roll them up if it makes sense, right? Either they have a common infrastructure component, maybe it's a certain brand or type of piece of infrastructure, or it's a set of infrastructure within one line of business area. Anything that's going to go through URB or the nuclear approval process doesn't change, right? These again are all going to feed a series of refinements to get to a business case, which once you go through the business case, it would then be expected you go to URB or wherever is going to fund it. That's really all I have to say on that. Okay, so what's going to go on here? So what's going to happen is as we collect all these roadmaps and other inputs, we're going to basically for this year build a giant spreadsheet. We're going to compile this list and rank it with the dollars, slice and dice it by year. There's a timeline I'll get to shortly where basically the SLT will rank and stack it. We'll come up with a list and say, okay, here's our first snapshot of the 5-year portfolio plan, right? And again, the objective is to understand our own IT capital spend and illustrate to our business partners, hey, this is what we heard from you. This is an anticipated year-over-year capital spend for IT type projects. So following on that, essentially this is just getting into the more details of how we're going to rank those, right? So obviously if something is required for a regulatory compliance, that's going to be a very high quote unquote must do. The second then becomes more of an evaluation of the objective scores, right? So we're going to look at the higher scoring ones first versus the lower. There will be a workshop amongst the SLT later this summer to rank and stack this work. And again, this is the first round. So there's 2 phases to this process, and I'll get to that in a future slide. But as it says across the top there, really what we're doing is refining what was traditionally must do versus should do, right? So obviously regulatory compliance is a must do, right? Whether it's BUC driven, FERC driven, RFC, NRC, then the other one becomes more of a business type decision.
So quick question, Rich. So if you have an application or product which is out of support, would that be a must do or a should do?
So if it supports a regulatory compliance, maybe OSHA or SOX or other type agency where we need that application's data to maintain some type of compliance level, then it would be a must do. Ranking group 2 is going to be how we understand the should do's, and if you don't mind, I'll segue to the next slide.
Okay.
So basically what we're going to do now is this becomes more of an objective-based scoring, right? And this is really to help rank the should do's. So for example, if it reduces risk, right? So again, risk being SOX, SIP, cyber, right? And there's some criteria, and we'll get to this. That gives you 1 scoring. Does it create headroom, right? And again, it's like an efficiency or replacement. And then lastly is, does it allow us to increase revenue, right? And again, we can increase revenue either by adding new transactions or new types or reducing the cost of a transaction. So that's more of that headroom. So as you can see, there's scores from 0 to 3 for each one. So a ultimate unicorn project would be 9. If you could do everything, which would be the highest score. Anticipating most of these probably are going to rank in the 2 and 3, maybe even 4 range, which is why we'll see some analysis of the work, right? Because again, there's the score and then there's the cost. So you have to really look at both to understand the true value proposition. So again, this is just an example. And we're going to have some instructions and job aids coming out today. I just want to give everyone the overview. Okay, so the next phase is right in July. We have what's called, I'm calling it LRP1. So this is this list that's gone through the dollar valuation plus the scoring evaluation. The next step then is really getting us ready for business case. But to understand business case, now we got to start adding people, right? So again, this is, we're going to call it the list, the list above the line. So let's say there's 50 projects. So then all the GPMs that have projects above the line would then have to go through basically a second iteration, which is okay, you told me that this project was 12 months, $2 million. Now we're going to say is, okay, what types of folks do you need to do this, right? And again, this is at a very high level FTE type, right? So we're, the lowest unit of precision here would be 0.25 FTE. And really what we're just trying to understand here is we sum it across 50 projects, and let's say I get a number of 200 people. The SLT is going to look across the New Jersey IT organization and say, okay, we really don't have 2/3 of our organization available to do project work. So that means then we have to go back to the GPMs and say, can some of this be staff aug? What does that look like? How does that influence the cost? Right? So maybe you had a project that, would be good value if it was done by primarily internal labor, but now if I have to do more staff aug, the dollar shifted up. Now maybe it's still a good possibility, but maybe not as much value. And then once we get through that process, that will be the quote final list for the fall. And again, we're always going to leave some headroom for emergent work, right? This isn't just like the list is locked, it's frozen, that's all we're going to do. We live in a dynamic world. You got to leave some room for flex. The goal is to really get everything prepped for business case challenges in November and December, so that the teams can really start executing in January, right? Historically, January, February has sort of been a downtime, right? We didn't have a lot of stuff in the queue ready to go. What we're trying to do here is get ahead of that so that we could be as productive across as many months of a calendar year as possible, right? Given that, look at PSEG, I would say anything after December 15th is pretty quiet, although I know last year we tried to put some stuff in. And January is also historically quiet as well. What we want to do is, if we have approved projects and they could start January 4th, right, at least we could start the contractor onboarding, maybe start signing some statements of work, right? We're not waiting till mid-February or March to really get the gears turning for the work.
Hey, Rich.
Yes.
And when we look at those sort of things, are we looking at, how we get that list out to procurement to make sure they're staffed to meet our requirements?
Oh, absolutely, Sam.
Yeah. In the past, Rich, we normally would. Yeah. This way we're making them aware of, hey, we got 50 of these coming or 20 of these coming, or there's an RFP coming, just so they're staffed and they're able to meet our requirements. Yeah.
Right, and then again, to your point, if maybe if you're doing RFP, we have to tweak some timelines, right? So again, it's providing a way. So again, if you think about it from soup to nuts, and I'll get to that on the next slide with a timeline type view. It's really going through a series of steps to take a laundry list of things down into something here's an agreed upon prioritized list between IT, their lines of business, right? And then, with a very solid agreement of here's what's 23, here's, again, a higher confidence level 24. And then again, as you get out to 25 and beyond, it gets a little fuzzier. But again, we're going to go through this process yearly.
Yeah.
The one thing I do want to make clear, because I think there's been some confusion around this. The purpose of business, I know a lot of people say, I already got funding from the business. You really should be doing BCCT before URB. And really, the whole purpose of the business case challenge team is really just for the leadership to say, hey, project team, did you really understand all your stakeholders? Like, are you really coming in with a good 50% confidence on your scope? Because again, when you come into business case, it's plus minus 50%, right? But sometimes what we've seen is maybe I forgot about testing, maybe I forgot about change management, maybe I didn't see all the details of my vendor licensing, and maybe that project should have come in at a 1.5 million plus or minus 50%. So it's just that holistic view of making sure that teams are coming in and having understanding all the stakeholders and all the areas that could be impacted by their project, and that they've sort of, again, rough order magnitude, incorporate that in the business case. So what are we looking at from a timeline perspective? So today is the 12th. Oh, sorry. Let me go take a step back. I apologize. So the strategize, that's the pre-work, as someone said, that's what you're all going through now, is building these roadmaps, or at least if you're not in the roadmap process, thinking about, hey, what do I need to deliver from a life cycle? What am I having potential ideas from my business partner? The phase one is this iterative process of taking proposals, rationalizing and prioritizing them. Then in phase two, again, we go into the business case where basically we have a set of work ready to go for the following year. So here's the high level milestones down here. So, and I'll send this deck out after the meeting. Today is our kickoff. The one-pagers or the projects at a glance will be due within the next month. Again, based on the criteria, right? 2023, 2024 projects, $5 million or greater. But the rest will just go into the spreadsheet list. We'll have that ranking complete by end near the end of June, and then basically we will have the 5-year ranked roadmap by the end of June is the goal. Then in July, the SLT will review all these inputs and basically, do some shifting and some tweaking. And again, this will be our first draft of a 5-year plan by mid-July. In the fall, we come back right now with that approved list, right? Once we've had the conversation with the peers at the business level, where now, as I mentioned earlier, we start adding resources to that, right? So we said, hey, it's $1 million project. Is that 5 people? Is that 10 people? And this is a refinement of that list. We are going to have a tool called Estimate Light, which will help give you some guides to help calculate how many FTEs that is. We'll do the carryover planning, right? That's another area we want to make sure we accommodate in the budget, what's going to carry over into the next year. We'll take those estimate lights and put it into a capacity report towards the end of September, along with the carryover, and then basically we will have a quote unquote locked and loaded plan by the beginning of November. And then basically we'll spend November and December taking the ones that really need to kick off in Q1 2023, going through the business case challenge session. So that's the timeline that we're going to work towards executing this year. I'm going to pause there for questions or comments.
Is there a template for the project at a glance input page?
I'm sorry, what was that, Guru?
Is there a template?
Yes, yes,
okay.
yes. We will have a template and a job aid that explains it.
Okay.
And again, that's only for projects that are going to start in 23 and 24 that would have an estimated value of 5 million plus. Right, again, whether it's line of business funded or IT driven, IT capital funded. Other questions, comments, concerns?
So Rich, this is Shobha. We have started the journey for the SAP S4 HANA, right? Last year we did some RFP, and so how does that need to be translated into this new process?
Yeah, you probably already have. Yeah, you probably already have a lot of the required information. And again, this is here. Let me move on to the next slide because it might be a little clearer. Get to. I'm going to come back to this. So if you could see this, I mean, again, you probably have, since SAP is a multi-year, right? High level spend. We know it's a business priority. It's also feeds into our regulatory compliance. And again, these would just be I would go out on a limb and assume you know the objectives of the SAP upgrade, its major risks, why we have to do the SAP upgrade. I would say I don't know, is Kim the key stakeholder or is that Dan? So
Sorry?
again,
The key stakeholder, okay.
right, so if you look here, right, so this would be like the project sponsor.
Yep.
Or the division lead, or whoever, who are we doing this on behalf for? Who is the primary? So again, most of this you would already have, or it's pretty straightforward to fill out, right? The value proposition goes back to that, obviously with SAP upgrade, right? We're going to improve our SOX compliance. Probably doesn't do anything for headroom, but probably frees up some financial opportunities too, right? In terms of depending what we do with SAP, we could lower some of our implementation costs, because right now it's typically difficult to integrate with our current SAP environment.
Yeah, okay.
So I just want to take a step back. So, someone asks, why are we doing this? And where we're going to go with all this long term, right? So why are we collecting all this data? Why we're doing all this is really to get us into a more solid practice of doing portfolio management, right? So as we get the data, we turn this data into projects, right? We're then going to start tracking the projects, understanding where are we spending what, where, how are we utilizing our resources? Do we have enough resources? This all becomes much more objective data that allows us to have data-driven conversations with our line of business especially when it comes around to understanding the true cost of initiatives, right? Sometimes I've had many conversations of, oh, why is this cost this? Why, because again, from the line of business, they just don't understand where we have resources to support certain processes and functions and why we have to staff aug, or why is, hey, you're putting this in, but now why all of a sudden do I need additional folks to support this? Well, because it's a more complicated environment, it does more things, it's a new skill set. We only had 2 for this, now we need 3. It allows us to be more transparent to understand, again, we can use, as we do this over year, we can show past historical trends and actuals, and then use that to adjust the forward-looking stuff, right? So if you don't track all this at a portfolio level, it's very hard to have that conversation without that data in hand, right? And basically show them year over year, quarter over quarter, how we're performing, where is it going, what are we doing? And when you can do this at a leadership level, it really does provide credibility to the organization, right? It's a data-driven conversation that allows you to have real objective conversations of, hey, we heard you, this is what you want to do, this is the cost to do it, right? We're going to be transparent with the costs. Now, value is a totally different area, right? Value is up to the business, but our job is to provide that cost. And the other thing that I really want to get to again, help the organization is capacity. So one challenge we see year over year is, if you look at the mad dash of, especially with all the projects springing up now, we try to do a lot between the April and October timeframe. Well, with summer vacations and everything, that gets very difficult, right? So we try to do a lot of work and basically stress the organization because everyone's trying to do everything at once. So, we got to try to even it out. And this process will help us understand, when do we need people to do the work? And as we evolve it, and it's not only people, it's like, what types of skills do we need? Do we need different infrastructure services? Do we need cloud services? Do we need integration services, right? What types of skills do we need to implement these projects? And this will get into a governance process, right? So again, as the GPMs, as you're tracking your portfolios and understanding your world of work, we're going to have quarterly meetings to basically track and observe the work and then refine our forecasts. So again, it's more of a regular cadence for us as the IT organization to better understand and manage our work, and provide, the folks on this call, if you look down at that last bullet there, do you have the folks and dollars and resources you need, right? We want to get ahead of that curve, because it's much easier to have a conversation earlier than after the fact. So again, going back to the project at a glance, this is just that I said we'll have a job aid again that will sort of describe the fields and what it does. Again, it's not rocket science, it's an elevator pitch. We will have something up here in our SharePoint directory pretty soon. No, I did not update this date, my apologies. And then we'll have some trainings and the Estimate Light tool when that gets published in the near future. Again, don't worry about the Estimate Light tool. That is something more for the future fall process where we start looking at FTEs. So I want to pause there. Questions, concerns, comments?
Rich, this is Chandra here from Jason's team. Quick question, actually, as you stated in the beginning, right? These roadmaps are driven by business as well as the internal organization also, right? So will there be any visibility given on what the business roadmap looks like?
Well, so part of, again, is you should be taking that business roadmap and developing into the concepts, right? That is part of the role of the GPM is to work with their business partner and understand their needs and figure out what does that look like from a IT concept point of view.
All right, got it, Rich. Actually, so it will be done at a GPM level.
Yeah, well, Richard, I think it's a little bit more confusing because it's on the infrastructure side, right? So we have to work with every application team's line of business to understand.
I agree. So, and that brings up a good one. And I realize this is a challenging area for infrastructure, but I think there's an opportunity here where as you're getting inundated or these requests coming in, how can you guys re-wrapper this work, right? I think we have a tendency here is, oh, well, the business funded X, Y, and Z. I have all these codes. I need to do like 10 projects. There are ways where we can sort of, I'll call it for lack of a better term, virtually wrap it on the IT side, right? So you could still keep the charge codes to the business, but how we manage and track that work can be done as part of a larger project thing, right? So if there's a lot of commonalities, right? If you're doing something for, I don't know, I'm going to pick on, say, like gas, right? I'm going to do an ACES upgrade. That's a lot of infrastructure for a client.
Right.
We could put that in and say, okay, I got ACES for gas, but I also have, I don't know, maybe some other small tools that they have or some analytics. How can I aggregate these? That makes more sense to me as a GPM supporting the infrastructure for that particular line of business. And again, if you guys want to have a session, myself and my team can coach you through some of this to figure out how to, rethink aggregating some of the work that fits into this model. I don't want to kill everyone with a death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah, Rich, I think that's one of the good suggestions, like where, if we could able to bring up a aggregated business model roadmap, right, working with all the GPMs, that helps, in avoiding any duplicate work or redundant work, because if every GPM is looking for some business analytics tool or, cloud solution, right, if we know that at an overall roadmap, so the infrastructure team can propose, what can work for the broader run, basically.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So maybe what we can do in here as we the roadmaps in the next month, right, as the other more the ones that have more of a project application type centric view, I'll call it, we could start working with the infrastructure teams to help you guys. And then maybe we can, again, this is a first stab at the process, right? So my intention is to evolve this year over year too, to help better suit the needs of this organization. So I'm glad you brought that up.
All right, thanks, Rich.
Other questions, concerns?
Would you be having a similar presentation for people who report to GPMs?
I can if you want.
Yeah, it would be good to.
Do you want me to?
This, yeah.
Do you want to come to the department? I'm more than happy to present this at a department.
That'll be good. The whole department to understand what's coming, what needs to be done, and with everything else that we have, right? We'll have to prioritize what needs to be done.
Right. But again, if you go roll back up to big picture, what we're trying to do here is by the time we get to this final plan updates by 11 is really have, again, a concrete list. So the entire organization has I'll call it an 80% confidence level of what we're going into 2023 with, right? Because we always have to leave some buffer because things pop up, just the nature, the nature of the beast. But I think that way, if we have a clear list that the entire organization knows, okay, here are the 40 some odd projects we're going to execute in 2023 from an IT and a line of business perspective, it hopefully, my goal is to allow everyone to plan their resources and understand, what they need to deliver when. That's really one of the top level goals of this process.
So how do we feed in everything else that we do? For instance, things coming up, right? Like the Windows 2008, you've got to replace upgrade, whatever needs to be done to replace that. And a lot of other things which keep coming in, right? So how do you feed it into this so you get a complete picture of the resource utilization?
Oh, Guru, man after my own heart. I couldn't have asked a better question. So I'll give you a perfect example on that one. So one is from the infrastructure team. If you all are seeing the need to aggregate efforts, something like that, or even a bulk hardware replacement, like maybe we need to replace a series of routers that are all end of life or what have you. If you see an opportunity to aggregate that into a larger project, that becomes one of these must-do projects. And to your point is, let's say Windows 2008 comes in. What I've showed the business is a laundry list of prioritized projects with dollars and rough level timelines. We could say is, hey, here's this other thing. It's a cyber risk. It's a support risk. It's going to cost X million dollars, right? It's going to take a team of people to go replace and test all this stuff. What comes off the list, right? So you're giving them that transparency, or they might just say, hey, you know what? I got 5 little applications. Okay, fine. UIT, you want to kill it because it's you can't support it and it's not cyber compliant. Well, we'll get rid of it, right? But you're now enabling and you're giving them data to make that decision. Because again, at the end of the day, we have a finite capacity, right? Because I think sometimes we continuously try to keep doing more and stretch ourselves too thin, and then what happens is things start to suffer. I want to have that conversation earlier and say, okay, I committed to doing these 40 items of work. You want to introduce a 41st, what's falling off the list to keep us at 40? Because we keep trying to play this, oh, we'll just keep adding more to the list, and that doesn't always have the best results.
Yeah, and we've got to keep in mind that all the application groups are supporting their applications as well, right? That takes a chunk of their time as well.
Exactly, and that's why I want to try to get into the organization to think more resource-based, right? So again, you always have options, right? Is I could do so much in-house, I can completely outsource it, or I could do a blended model, right? Where it's a couple PSEG resources overseeing some staff aug or a fixed fee type engagement, but that has a cost, right? I mean, no offense, we're typically cheaper than our outsourced counterparts. I know for some of the contracts I've seen, I would love to make what I see some of the big four charge at an hourly rate. Be a very nice salary. But again, right, it goes up into the dollar and becomes a business decision.
Yeah. Hey, Rich?
Yep.
Do you see our business partners falling in love with this concept or no?
Oh, absolutely. Because again, we're saying, here's what we heard from you, right? Here's something you may not be aware of, right? They don't always have the best visibility into life cycle planning, and I'm trying to drive that, right? Because again, that does consume a lot of people's time on this call and their staff.
Yeah.
And then, we're seeing this today is, we have cyber things to respond to, we have life cycle planning, and then the business is, well, why, such and such team's not supporting my project? Well, because I only have so many people on that team.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do this, that, and the other thing. But if I can't show them that, it becomes a very difficult conversation. This is, hey, they're working on these 8 projects. Either you can let us hire more people, or we could take something off the plate.
Yeah.
It's a decision, right? I'm giving you a decision.
Yeah. Rich, I'm gonna assume that that we'll communicate this and it'll work. I know that some of our clients will be that reasonable with us. I know there are others out there who are going to tell us that's your problem. I need to get it done. This is my go forward position and my mission. I guess we'll tackle them each type one at a time, right?
Right. But again, the key thing here is now it becomes data driven, right? So I could say is, okay, you want to put a large infrastructure project in, if that's going to consume X hundreds of man hours or person hours.
Sure.
And you want to do it at the same time these other 4 initiatives and these line of businesses are going on, you tell us which one's the priority, right? Well, I'll gladly kick something off the plate.
Sure.
You know, I know Jason and team are firefighting right now with ADMS, OMS, and GIS because of a bunch of projects that all slid. So
Yeah.
Preach on.
And the regulatory recovery and the financial folks really like this kind of approach too, to have some visibility into when we're spending dollars and how much we're spending so that there aren't big surprises. And, you know, CFOs really love the output of this type of a process. And, you know, I expect the business will embrace it for sure.
yeah. And again, we're easing into it. So Greg got a little bit ahead of me, but he sort of alluded to, if you mature this process to where I would want to get it to, and I'm sure where Greg had it, where he was from, you actually start providing your business with a CapEx spend by month. You can actually give them a true IT forecast for N+1, which is the, you know, the year ahead of your planning, and an anticipated year +2. And they will take that to the bank and they go, oh, this is the best thing since sliced bread, right? Because again, if you look at utility-based finance, the more you could solidify and give them assurance, or at least a ROM area to work with, it's much better for the business to plan around. And Greg, if you have anything to contribute to that.
No, I mean, that's spot on. The company I just came from was in 15 different regulatory jurisdictions, 7 operating companies. There was multiple rate cases going on at all times, and having the kind of information and the IT dollars, don't get me wrong, the IT dollars are a rounding error on the capital that the rate case folks need to deal with in their regulatory jurisdictions. But it is helpful when they're trying to plan out their return on equity and trying to plan their rate case strategy and how we're recovering different investments, especially the larger dollar investments, the big, like SAP is going to need to be upgraded at some point. That's not going to be a cheap project. And, you know, there's a lot of big investments to make. And the more that the regulatory folks have visibility into this, the better they can plan the recovery strategy.
Just answering Lorena's question. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, and again, that's what they're looking for us from an IT organization, is help us understand what you're going to spend on our behalf, right? And what we need to do to stay compliant. I'm sure if you guys have all heard Ralph Izzo's thing, cyber is very big in his book. And he's very proud that PSEG has, I forget the name of that score, but we're at 800 and the rest of our counterparts at like 6 something. He's very proud of that score, right? But there's a cost to that. Mm-hmm. And what we need to show the team is, yes, thank you, BitSite. Hey, you want to keep a BitSite 800? That's great. We're more than happy to help you do that. But that takes this many people to maintain that level. So if you're going to do that, then something else has to give. But if I can't show them that demand and how that impacts the organization, it's a difficult conversation, right? Because they'll just say, well, we want that. And we say, okay. But then what's not happening? And that's really what we want to improve, right? And that's where you, again, give that list. So they say, okay. And then if something does happen, we say, hey, you know, we're impacted. Like, you know, let's look at TSA, right? All the TSA gas work. That was a lot of effort for that compliance. Well, okay, if something like that emerges again, we could say, hey, here was the proposed list. If this is a priority, you know, can we take off the bottom 2 because we just don't have the capacity to do it successfully. Going back to Lorena, did that answer your question, Lorena? The 11:10 and the 12:16, there's going to be multiple BCCTA sessions. That's just the time range. And also, Rich, I also wanted, real quick, Wilson, I just wanted to make clear, the BCCT would be for projects kicking off in Q1, right? So we're not doing all of them for 2023. It's just the projects that need to hit the ground running in January, February, and March. Wilson?
Yeah, so Rich, question. I know you said you'll provide job aids and templates for the process. We've typically used demand management within ServiceNow, right, historically. Are we going to continue to do that in parallel? Do we need to change anything there?
So what I will say is yes. So what we will do is when we get the 5-year, those should all have a demand record. So I guess
You'll
what
let
I'm
us
sa-
know
so-
at what point in the process we have to go back into ServiceNow and
Sure.
create demands.
Yep, I'll
Okay.
take that as an action item.
So these demands will be funneling into the BCCT, Wilson.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that,
Yeah.
you know, we still have demand, you know, either or, right? Either we're going to do both or one or the other. Just want to make sure it's clear, you know, what the process is.
Yeah.
So there's no confusion.
Yeah, and Lorena brought up a good question is sometimes the clients are putting stuff into ServiceNow. We'll have to figure out how to slice and dice this. Like I said, this is our first stab. That's why I'm trying to really make it only apply to the bigger stuff, as we will have to work out some of the details that Lorena has rightly captured there in the chat, that, you know, those will be a little more difficult. But again, it's a first step, right? This is a first step into a continuous process. It's twice a year. There's the spring component, which is the big forecast, the fall component, which is a refinement, and then into the winter, which is you lock and load and you get everything ready for the start of the next year. Other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, so everyone's going to be an ace. We'll be sending out more communications shortly. Again, there'll be the job aids, the master list of where we're going to put all these demands and the rankings, and more to come. I'm excited about this. I think this would be a great step for the organization, providing transparency not only amongst ourselves, right? So again, this is visible to the entire IT team, so we could see all the crazy work that is requested to us by our business peers and ourselves, but also, you know, provide our team an opportunity to understand how to influence and prioritize the work as well. So we are near the top of the hour. I think there's a half hour left, but I will gladly give that back because I know everyone's extremely busy. So if there's no other questions, we'll end the meeting. And if you have any concerns, you could always reach out to myself and my team.
Thanks, Rich.
All right. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank
Have
you.
a
Have
great
a good
day.
day. Bye-bye.